Hello, everybody. In this last module, we're going to be talking about establishing family and community engagement in a way that is modeling universal design for learning. And so I want to just kind of go through this with you in a short lecture. So, really, what we want to do today is learn concrete strategies for how we can foster collaboration and support the integration of UDL into our districts, into your districts. So we're going to use that as the frame. You can utilize these principles for all family and community engagement. The example that we're going to use is how would you do it to introduce and support UDL in your community. But these same strategies work with whatever initiative or whatever efforts you're doing to support your families and your community. So we want to think about the concept of why, what, and how. When we're thinking about ongoing public engagement, we need to really find the relevance and saliency in this work for our stakeholders. And we do that by using multiple means of engagement. We want to also start creating knowledge. So we want to teach our stakeholders, for example, what UDL is and how UDL work will be better and will better the district and community as a whole. And we do that using multiple means of representation. And then thinking about the how, where we're building common ground. So based on a shared vision, we set long-term goals, we plan effective strategies, we monitor progress, and we modify strategies as needed. We do that using multiple means of action and expression. So let's talk about what these strategies look like, kind of fleshed out a little bit. When we're thinking about engagement, we really want to think about what about the stakeholders differs significantly in what attracts their attention and engages their interest. And so, in order to do that, we need to understand those interests and we need to utilize those in our work with our stakeholder groups. And if they relate personally or purposefully to the benefits of UDL, we know then that they start to take some ownership over it and they no longer become passive recipients of this initiative, but it's no longer an initiative. It's the way we do the work we do, and they feel closely related to this work because we've shown them some of the importance and saliency of this work. And when we're thinking about the concept of representation and we're starting to create this knowledge, we need to provide information about UDL through different modalities. And we need to provide information in a format that will allow for adjustability by the user and certainly access by all users. So make sure that we don't print things out in small print, make sure that sound can be amplified, etc. And when we're building this concept of common knowledge, we really want to think about the planning process. So, how do we set these long term goals and plan effective strategies for monitoring our goals toward UDL implementation? And then, how do we think about fidelity measures and feedback loops to kind of understand how to monitor that progress? And thus, future wise, modifying the strategies that we need to do as needed because the best laid strategies don't always come to fruition. So, how do we kind of do that work together? So, we're going to begin by thinking about some sample citizens that belong in many of our school districts. And so, we've got somebody that has been in our community for a very long time. They will say things like, I really believe in the schools, but maybe they might feel like it's costing a lot of money. They would say things sometimes like, "My kids, there were 30 of them in a classroom, and they were just fine." And then we might have a parent, but this is a parent that's working full time, maybe working two jobs, and so although they believe in the mission of the work, they might not feel like they have time um, to maybe even interact with information coming from the school. And then we just might have a very disinterested community member who really doesn't have any connections or buy-in to our community at large. And so we have to think about first, why is UDL relevant to each of these stakeholders? Second, we want to think about how can you share UDL in a medium that meets his or her needs. And lastly, how can this person contribute to this work in a meaningful way? And so I just want to again give some authentic samples of this work, what it looked like. So when we're trying to reach out to different community members, whether it be elected officials, politicians at the federal or state level, staff, parents, when we're thinking about local partners such as local businesses, private schools in the community, universities and colleges, and then thinking about reaching out to others like the Council on Aging or the Senior Center, making sure that whether they touch the school on a daily basis or not, that they are recognized as important and valuable members of this work. And then thinking through how do we do direct and specific outreach to each of these groups. So these are just some photos of some sessions and work that I had led across our district, going to the Council of Aging as opposed to asking them to come out to us. And we did this outreach on a quarterly basis during their regularly scheduled meetings. And in both towns, we were regional district in both towns where we supported, and going to every single faculty meeting and getting the feedback from staff. And so one of the things that I think is important is we created a stakeholder map. You don't have to do it as a map. You can choose how you might want to do it. But it was an effort to say, these are our stakeholders, and creating mechanisms, dates, times, modalities, opportunities for us to engage with our community. We didn't just do this around the implementation of UDL. We did this around just our schools. But when we were rolling out Universal Design for Learning, we already had these systems in place to share this information and to garner feedback from our community. We also did a communication preference survey, and so we engaged with a series of stakeholders and asked them how did they prefer to get information. And so one thing that we found was, for example, this one was one we sent to our families, that a lot of people, we thought we were using social media very well, Twitter, for example, and a lot of our parents came back and said, no, we don't really like Twitter to be where we get information, maybe supplemental, but make sure everything goes on a landing page, on an email, and on a website. And so it's not that we limited the options of communication, but we had a better understanding of those that were accessed the most. And so again, reaching out, we did a series with all stakeholders about their preference in communication methods, and found that with some of our families, they were not going to ever go to our website, and we didn't have everyone's email in the whole community. We only had access to our families and things like that. And so we did things like start a new TV station on local television. We created a show on education to kind of promote our work and get that out there. They were sending out actually paper bills at the time. They're electronic now, but they would allow us inserts into those for free. Because a public utility was actually town owned in this part of the district. And so we would send communication out that way. We started spending a lot more time getting articles into local papers. So again, thinking about not only electronic in person, but also some more of the traditional opportunities for communication. And when we're, and again, the intent was when we communicate, we are understanding what their motivations are. So it could be as obvious as I have children in the schools, I want them to succeed, and it could be as kind of related as working with real estate agents and saying the better we promote our schools, the higher the price of the value of the home. So we really want to help you contributing to the vision of what we want our schools to be. And when we're thinking about representation, just thinking about how can we work with stakeholders to get this information. So again, going to local community TV and explaining it, doing all staff presentations on it, school board presentations, creating one-page handouts, working really authentically with our leadership team to make sure that they were really grounded in this work. And again, supplementing it with things like Twitter, where we created a hashtag. So that would kind of keep this work going and growing. And then thinking about how do we build common ground based on shared vision. So we went through a year and a half of a needs assessment with the full community. 80 community members across our two towns were involved, elected officials, students, staff, and they helped us unpack our needs. They helped us draft our vision. They helped us create our plan. Every single teacher participated in the vetting and the development of the plan. So when we came out with our plan and it included universal design for learning in a really robust way, this was not new. They understood why we were focusing on that. They understood what it was. They understood why we had it. And we've seen many years of growth with that. It took a while as a community to get us there. We didn't want to just rush it. But once we got there, we're now sustaining this on year 5, I think, of the work going forward. And I'm not even there anymore, and they're still moving forward, which is the best sign. I think facilitated leadership is if you're not physically there, that this work continues. Um, and so, just if you want to pause the video and just uh, take a quick break to ask this question, what was your vision for your school designed to benefit all stakeholders? And so, kind of think about where your district school vision strategy is in relationship to the concepts of inclusiveness or UDL. And then if you want to do this on the discussion board or you want to just do this individually, one thing might be to think about a personal goal. It's not something that's going to be graded or turned in or anything like that, but based on based on this question, simply like this vision question that I just asked, do we have a vision that supports it? If not, how do we kind of work with our community to create a vision that works on it? It doesn't have to be related to that prompt. That was just one to get you going, but start to kind of think through what might be a goal for how you can use the principles of UDL in your parent and community outreach. It could be related to UDL or it doesn't have to be. All right, thank you so much for listening to the lecture. I hope you enjoy the assignment and have a great week.